How much is enough when saving for retirement? So today's the day you've chosen to crack the retirement saving challenge. In other words, how much pension do I need to retire comfortably? And should I be starting to save right now and every year until retirement? These are great and big questions. And honestly, they can feel so impossible to answer that plenty of people take one look, panic, and opt to forget about it for years. Because if retirement is 20, 30, or 40 years away, what is life even going to look like? What are you going to be like? And how are you going to want to live this life of yours? And that's before we even get onto the subject of how long you're going to live for. Right now, for a 30-year-old man in the UK, the average life expectancy is 85. But there's a 1 in 10 chance of making it to 99. Women of the same age have 1 in 4 chance of reaching 97. This, as you can guess, is a big difference. I mean, if you plan your savings around living to 85, but end up powering on for a couple more decades, what's going to happen then? What if you run out of money? Thankfully, this isn't all guesswork. Some people spend their entire careers cracking this puzzle, and there are tried and tested ways to build a solid retirement plan, and that's exactly what I'm here to talk to you about today. Hi, I'm Gary, and today with Moneyfarm, we're going to talk about all of this, so let's dive in. Before we dive into retirement plans and so on, we have to talk about a couple of things that should help you get motivated to start on this right now. Compounding and pensions. Let's start with the first one. The earlier you start, the better, because when you're saving for retirement, time really is your superpower, thanks to a little concept called compounding. Compounding essentially means that when you put money into a pension, over time, that money starts earning money of its own. And then that money earns money too, and so on and on and on. So you get all this extra money on top of the money you save. And the earlier you start and the more you put in, the greater the impact. That's why people often say that compounding does the heavy lifting for you over time. Let's look at a simple compound growth example. Not a pension, because there are other things to factor in with pensions, which I'll talk about in a minute. Imagine at the age of 25, you had £100 to invest, and then committed to investing a further £250 a month every month for 40 years. If we sum this up, you would end up putting in a total of £120,100 of your own money. But if your investments grew by 5% a year, you could end up with around £360,000. And this difference, in a nutshell, is the power of compounding. Start later, and you'll have to save much more of your own money to get the same number. Motivator number 2 is pensions. They're basically the account you keep your retirement savings in, and they come with perks. The first is tax relief. The government really wants us to save for retirement because there's more and more of us living longer and longer. So here in the UK, we get massive incentives to encourage us. But what do these incentives look like? Well, if you're a basic rate taxpayer and you pay £80 into a pension, the HMRC will top it up so you actually end up with £100. It's not technically free money, as they're just giving back money you would have paid in income tax, but it certainly feels like it. And if you're a higher rate taxpayer, you can claim another 20% back through a self-assessment tax return, so 40% in total. And if you're an additional rate taxpayer, you can claim 25%, meaning a total of 45%, which over time can give your retirement savings a big boost. Now, as with everything, there are certain rules and regulations, so make sure you read the small print. But taking full advantage of pensions really is a great way to tackle the mountain that is retirement saving. And as well as this, there's your employer. Most employers have to put money into pensions for their employees, so make sure you understand and make the most of any company pension scheme that you have. Because with your employer and the HMRC chipping in, your retirement savings should grow a lot faster. However, this also means that if you're self-employed, unfortunately, you miss out on the employer bit. How much should you be saving for retirement? Well, there are a lot of different ways that experts approach this. Some suggest you should take your age and halve it, then use that number as a percentage of your salary. So if you're 32, you'd save 16% of your salary, which on a salary of £45,000 is £7,200. Others recommend aiming to have 1 times your salary saved by the time you're 30 and twice by 40. But if this all feels a bit finger in the wind for you, here's another way. The good people at Pensions UK have worked out how much a basic, moderate, or comfortable lifestyle will cost us a year in retirement. And then they've worked out the approximate pension fund size you'd need to achieve this. Now, there are lots of notes that accompany this. For example, it assumes that you've paid off a mortgage, are receiving the full state pension, and will convert your pension savings into an annuity. But it's a great place to start. As an example, let's look at a comfortable retirement plan. According to Pensions UK, a one-person household needs £43,900 a year, and a two-person household £60,600 to achieve a comfortable retirement. Obviously, your idea of comfort will be different to mine, but it includes things like 2 weeks in the sun at a 4-star hotel every year, several mini breaks, money for eating out and giving nice gifts, as well as enough to cover things like bills and house maintenance. And to get this annual income in retirement, they say someone living alone would need a pension pot of £540,000 to £800,000. Two people sharing would need £300,000 to £460,000 each. How do we work all this back to how much you should be saving every year or month to get the figure you need? Well, you could crack open a spreadsheet and start doing all the sums yourself, but there are a load of factors to take into account, like inflation. So, thankfully, there's an excellent shortcut. Find yourself an online pension calculator, such as the one Moneyfarm has on its website. This will do all the difficult bits for you. You plug in all the relevant details like your age, how much you've got in any pensions already, what your employer contributes every month, and what you plan to put in. And then you'll tell it what age you want to retire at and what you want your yearly income in retirement to be. And then it spits out the answer for you. It will show you whether, based on what you put in, you're on track to reach your big total, and if not, what your shortfall is. The great thing about these kinds of calculators is that you can play around with the inputs. For example, changing the age you retire at, how much you're paying in, or your target. But do remember that this is just an illustration. Don't take it as gospel. But if you can't contribute as much as you want right now, the big thing to hold on to is that anything is better than nothing. Save as much as you can as soon as you can. But if you're starting later, don't panic. It's never too late. But there you have it. Everything you need to work out your own numbers and get going with your retirement savings. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe to the channel and have a look at the description where you'll find more on Moneyfarm and how to invest. Bye.